like to call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for October 3rd, 2017. And if everybody could join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. If we could have our roll call now, please.
Councilmember Haskew.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Councilmember Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell.
Here.
And Mayor Carlston.
Here. First item on the agenda is a presentation by Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, I've got to lower this a little bit. Can you hear me okay? I'm a little bit short, handicapped that way.
You can adjust it any way you'd like.
Okay, thank you so much. And good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. I'm Susan Miller. I'm the Director of Projects at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And I have here tonight Leo Scott, Project Manager with Gray Bowen Scott, and Lisa Klein also with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And we're here tonight to give you an update and some information on the I-680 Corridor Express Lane projects plural. We're going to talk a little bit about the project that just finished construction. You may have noticed signs up opening October 9th, and that is a project that has been led and managed by MTC. And we have some general information to share about the express lanes. And then we're going to talk in more detail about the authority's project that we are managing through construction, which is in the southbound direction from Martinez-Benicia Bridge down to meet up with the MTC project in Danville. So once we complete our portion of the project, then there will be a continuous carpool system, express lanes from the bridge all the way down to the county line. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leo to walk through this PowerPoint for you.
All right, thank you, Susan. So I'm going to start with express lanes for background purposes to give you an orientation to the concept, and then I'll launch into some details about the specific project that Susan just referred to. So just by way of information, an express lane, as you've now sort of probably driven the corridor, you've seen this sequence of signs, is a facility that allows single occupant payers, toll payers, to make use of the capacity that's in the lane. So if you are an HOV today, you use the express lane or the HOV lane for free. In the future, when it's an express lane, you'll still be free, along with motorcycles and clean air vehicles. And then if you're a solo driver, you could pay to use it with the use of a toll tag or a toll transponder, which is coming up here in the slide. So the idea behind these lanes is to encourage carpools and van pools and express buses to make use of the lanes as they do today, and allow for the best use of the remaining capacity by selling it and drawing cars out of the general purpose lanes to reduce congestion in the general purpose lanes by giving them and the buses and the HOVs a reliable travel time in the express lane. The way you do that is you provide the solo drivers with a tag today, which looks like the one on the bottom left. But in the new era of express lanes, we'll have the tag on the upper right, which is a switchable tag, as we refer to it, which allows a carpool to indicate that they are a carpool to the toll system, and they would then ride for free in the case of the 680 express lane. So they would have to indicate that they're either a 2-person vehicle or a 3+ person vehicle for that. Otherwise, they'd be tolled by the system. The operating hours for the facility that's going to open here next Monday, as well as the facility that we're going to talk about tonight, will actually be from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. That makes it consistent with the hours of operation along 580. If you've driven the 580 corridor, you will have no doubt seen that facility. All of the Bay Area toll lanes, or express lanes, I should say, will have the same hours of operation. They'll be rolled out on the various facilities from 5 to 8 as we move through the development of them. That allows for midday management of incidents along the road, and it allows for close monitoring. There will be close monitoring throughout the process as the lanes open and work their way into a long-running operation. All right, and how do we enforce that? Because we're going to collect tolls, there'll be revenue available to actually aid with enforcement. So that enforcement looks like a facility here on the lower right, which is a CHP enforcement or observation area for enforcement. So the CHP vehicles are able to actually maneuver, in this case, back into the facility there, be protected behind the barrier, and observe the vehicles in the lane. As the vehicles pass by the CHP, the system identifies them based on what their toll tag says. They're either a single occupant or they're a carpool. If it's a carpool and the CHP can observe that there aren't sufficient passengers in the car for it to be a carpool, then they would pursue that car and pull them over for an enforcement stop. The revenue allows for enhanced enforcement in the form of more CHP officers. So CHP officers are contracted to enforce the lane specifically, as opposed to what today happens on a regular carpool lane or HOV lane. The CHP just does it as part of their routine budget, and they simply don't have that amount of sufficient funds to maintain a specific enforcement of the HOV lanes. All right, so the project, to shift gears, as Susan pointed out, the southbound project that we're talking about tonight runs from the Benicia Martinez Bridge, the blue line on the left side, all the way down to Rudgear, where it connects with the current facility that's being opened here on Monday. The timetable for this, obviously we've been working on the design now for quite some time through 2016 to 2017, but we're approaching the point now where we're getting ready to do the utility relocation and the tree removal, which I'll talk about here shortly. And then the construction will run through 2018-19 and then into 2020, because we have quite a bit of testing, as you've now witnessed, on 880 in order to make sure that the toll system is operating properly. So ideally we open in late 2020, but with rain and other things that we might experience, 2021 could happen. Achieving mobility improvements. So part of the facility that we are going to operate here will actually have the double white line. So as you see in the photo on the left, this is an image from the Sonol Grade 680 express lane. That double white line is considered a buffer, and it's illegal to cross. So what that allows us to do is better manage traffic into and out of the lane, which does two things. It improves the throughput, or the travel through the lane, helps increase the reliability of the travel time, and it also keeps the traffic in the general purpose lanes from slowing down because they're trying to move in and out of the facility. So we will have that in two locations. We will have a buffer that starts as you drive southbound, starting at about the 242 interchange. That buffer will extend all the way down to just about North Main Street. It will open, which allows vehicles then to get out of the facility to get to the 24 westbound. Similarly, then it'll be open until you get down south of the 24 on-ramp to 680, and then it will close right about Rudgear and be closed for access until you get down to just about Stone Valley Road. That, through the modeling that we've done, the traffic analysis, that improves the overall operation of both the lane itself, the express lane itself, as well as the general purpose lanes. All right, so in order to do that, the HOV lane today stops at Treat, ends at Treat, and then it picks back up at Rudgear. We need to actually connect that, so we have to widen the freeway in order to do that. We're widening a little bit in the North Main Street area. It's primarily around the North Main Street on-ramp, and then again we have some widening that we have to do right at the Ignacio Valley on-ramp. Most of the added width is already available in that area, so most of what we'll create is restriped lanes. Once you get south of Olympic, though, there's width, and Caltrans has required us to widen the freeway there, and so we are going to literally tear down the wall that's there today and move it 10 feet outside of where it is, so towards the city street, in order to add the lane in that stretch. And so there's both the widening work there, and then there's widening at the Rudgear on-ramp. All right, so city improvements. As a part of what we're going to do in the city of Walnut Creek, we will be undergrounding some utilities at the interchange. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. We will complete the sidewalk that's on South Main Street today between Sunnyside and Brookdale Court. The new signal, we'll add new signals at the South Main Street on-ramp. There'll be resurfacing of South Main Street between the overcrossing and Sunny Court. We will add a lane to the Rudd Gear on-ramp, and then we will replace the planting, the replacement of the trees that we're going to take out in order to conduct the widening. All right, so the timeline for this is a little bit unusual because we have some gaps here, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to present this to you. So we're going to start with the utility relocation later this month. Then we're going to remove the trees. The trees have to be removed when the nesting season is not occurring, and that is in the winter. So we can remove trees November through the middle part of February. And then you won't see a lot of activity because we're going to be advertising the main contract, which will begin in the spring. And what you'll see to start the work is the sidewalk reconstruction. Then there will be a fair amount of work that happens up on the freeway before we actually remove the wall, which you won't see until 2019. And then the last thing I want to highlight is the repaving of South Main Street towards the end, as well as the replacement planting out in 2020. So I'm going to show you a couple images of locations of where this work is going to take place. So this is looking northbound on South Main Street. It's right at the intersection with the off-ramp. So you're looking at the South Main Street undercrossing. We will take that pole there, that PG&E pole has to be taken down for the widening of the freeway. We're going to remove that and underground the PG&E facility there, along with Comcast and Wave Technologies. The trees there are also going to be removed. So the first real visible thing that you're going to see is the removal of these trees along with the other trees in the interchange and south. The sidewalk that we're going to repair is in this stretch. So you'll see we're going to connect the dots basically. There's existing sidewalk on the far end to the left, and then on the far right, we're going to fill in the gaps. And then obviously maintain the pedestrians over there because all the work is going to be on the other side of the street. There will be some other improvements to the sidewalk right around the off-ramp interchange. We're going to reconfigure that, so there'll be some work there as well. And then here's just an image of where the sidewalk, one of the stretches of where the sidewalk will go in. And then one of the other things we have to do is we actually have to reconstruct the loop ramp, the loop on ramp, because of the configuration of the widened structure. We have to climb faster. So in order to do that, we've got a grade difference of 6 or so feet. You can't do that overnight. You can't close that gap. So we're going to have to close the ramp for about 2 weeks. And when we do that, which won't be until late 2019, we'll have a detour that runs those vehicles choosing to use that off-ramp or on-ramp down South Main Street and then put them on the new Rudd Gear on-ramp. And then we'll come back and we'll resurface the street. So after we've driven over it with extra cars and had construction equipment on it to get to the work, we'll repave it. And then so that's the last piece of work. And so what we wanted to finish with was just to let you know how we intend to communicate with you and your citizens about the project. So we've actually been at work over the last couple months. One is to launch a website. So that's the web address there. And we've held a number of meetings with some of the council members and with the mayor, as well as staff. Now, as we move towards actually beginning the work, we are launching a project hotline, so citizens will have a place to call as well as a website to turn to. We do intend to launch a quarterly newsletter, and that will begin. That will go out tomorrow, actually, to introduce the neighborhood meeting on October 25th, which will be at Park Mead Elementary School, which is that's the venue that we've held prior meetings at for the project. And Caltrans and the CCTA felt that it was important for us to meet there again. So we'll be back at Park Mead on the 25th. We will continue to coordinate with the Walnut Creek communications team, so we keep your staff abreast as to what's going on. And then prior to the closures and the detours that'll happen over the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, you'll see signage and detour maps and press releases as well. So try and keep you well informed as we move along. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you, Susan. Questions,
Yeah, thank you.
please?
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sure.
It was very clear. On your timeline, you had, it's regarding the sound wall. Do you build the new wall first and then take the old wall down?
No, unfortunately, we cannot do that. So the wall, we explored some of those possibilities. So the wall does have to come down before we can build the new wall. So that wall, that sound wall along, let's see if I have a good, the location here, number 4, basically here is
Pretty
not.
positive I know what it looks
Yeah,
like. I've
yeah.
lived there for
Been-
33
okay,
years.
You know what it is, yeah. So it's coming down,
and
then
so
it has
has
to be
he,
rebuilt.
or longer.
Part of the work will be done prior to the demolition of the wall. We actually have to create a retaining wall behind it in order to tear it down and rebuild it. So that work will be done at night before the wall comes down. That's driving piles to create a retaining wall to hold back the dirt that the current wall holds back. So that'll happen before the wall will come down, and then it gets rebuilt. So that'll last about 11 months
So I was
to do that.
recently talking with a friend who lives where the interchange is and went through about 2 months of night work right above his home. Next
For
to
the resurfacing that just happened
No, this
Oh,
was
no.
25 years
Okay,
ago.
okay.
During the
during the widening for the interchange.
The widening, the interchange,
Sure.
the flyover changed, and he said they were housed at night in a hotel for a couple of months because of the amount of work and the noise. Are you looking at that as a mitigation potentially for some of these people
We
that live
have
right
not
next
looked
to it?
at. The noise, the work that will take place here will take place during the day, not during the night. So the night noise will be the traffic on the freeway.
The traffic that now you can hear, which you can't currently hear because of the sound wall.
Or at least it's mitigated because of the sound wall. Yeah, exactly. So Susan, you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that we're looking at doing the brunt of the construction during the daytime, especially in the noisier things. And I believe they're cast and drilled to hold piles.
The piles will be drilled, cast and drilled holes.
Yeah, so
those
they're
will be
not
behind the
quite
wall.
as noisy. So we are concerned because of the length of time the sound will be down and the noise levels. So we will be out there kind of observing that and doing some monitoring, thinking about what we can do. We considered, is there somewhere for a temporary wall? There's really just no room. If you're very familiar with that area, it's very constricted as far as the utilities that are coming down on South Main Street there and the property owners that are right adjacent. So we will be trying to make sure the noise or activities are done during the daytime. We'll be doing monitoring of that.
Thank you, and thank you for having another meeting. And I'm sure you'll be prepared to answer these questions and many more
Yes.
that evening.
Any other questions? I have one. Will you be issuing earplugs or headsets to the neighbors in the area? It sounds kind of silly in a way, but if you are going to put in piles in the evening, even if you drill them in advance, you're still going to have a considerable amount of noise in the evening. So that's something that it's a serious question that I'm asking.
Mm-hmm. Well, we could take that into account. We might have to get a little creative here.
Thank you.
But again, I think the monitoring will be very important that we observe that because I think we don't want to keep people up all night. Such is the situation that they can't get to sleep. So we'll be looking at that carefully.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll have a presentation from Walnut Creek Downtown.
Good evening, Mayor Carlson and City Council members. My name is Kathy Hemingway. I'm the Interim Executive Director for Walnut Creek Downtown. And I'm here tonight to share with you an update on the mini plaza project that our board and committee members have been working on. We had earlier this year, City Council authorized funding for Walnut Creek to lead the creation of an active plaza in the traditional downtown, and that is located at the corners of Main Street and Cypress Street. And today there's a couple of photos of what it currently looks like. And just to give you a recap of our project progress to date, in February of 2017, Council allocated additional funds of $847,500 to completely fund the project. Once the design concepts were begun, along with the engineer, we Once the design concepts were begun, an engineered physical survey of the site was included. It was determined that Main Street drainage patterns would be significantly and adversely affected. So impacts would require an additional $300,000 for storm drainage solutions. To be clear, we are not here to ask for an additional $300,000. We understand that we need to be fiscally responsible, and as a result, we adjusted the plans to include the existing drainage. And then in the fall, just last week, we received the updated designs. So this evening we have our committee members, which include Brian Harahara and Joseph Gorney, and I'd like to introduce Joseph to be able to give you an understanding and a recap of our current design.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's interesting. I rarely come on this side of the podium, so I'm going to make sure that I know how to do this correctly. There you go. Okay, my name is Joseph Gorney, architect downtown, and I'm really honored to have been asked by Downtown Walnut Creek to be involved with this project. I kind of came in halfway after some early designs had been done, and as they were starting to deal with the drainage issues in the street. And there's really two goals that have been, there from the beginning, and one of them is to really work with what's there on the site already, and the second one is to be budget conscious as we go through. The original design had, which I think you might have seen at one time, that trees were all taken out. It wasn't quite as interactive, as playful as we really wanted it to be. And the extension into the street was really costly, and we were very concerned that there were going to be unknowns once they started digging, and that the cost could really escalate. So we decided to make some changes at that point, and hired Base landscape architects out of San Francisco and Portland. And the thing about Base is Andreas Stravopoulos, who I've worked with before. They've done a lot of schools. They've done a lot of work for Park Services, Bishop Ranch. They did a roving ranger thing for Golden Gate National Park, and they've won a lot of ASLA awards for some of their work, which is kind of interactive. We really wanted to push the design concept a little bit more maybe than Walnut Creek is used to seeing, because we think it's appropriate in this location. We really wanted to have some places for families to be able to rest. I hear that from a lot of people with children. Not a lot of good places to stop with the kids and feed and do different things. We wanted to make sure the design was kind of a series of smaller spaces as opposed to one large space. You have outdoor seating areas in there for the restaurants. There's a lot of utility areas. We wanted spaces for adults, spaces for kids, and kind of make it a series of small pieces. Keep the existing trees. We had an arborist report was done by the city, and they're healthy, except for some burns from heat lamps, which you never would have expected, but still they're in good shape. And we like the shade, and we like the canopy, and we think it's something to work with. All the existing planters, the concrete planters, are going to be removed. Some various seating, integrating some new planting, mostly in pots. And there's also opportunities for public art. We're looking at kind of a major light fixture and some areas for temporary art and permanent art as part of this. And also this sort of enhanced lighting. We want to make sure from down the street you see that it's there. So lighting over the restaurant area, and this light fixture in the middle of the space. And also to integrate some bike parking to kind of bring those some of those ideas into town. We're still looking at some options for using some of the parking spaces for some more or less temporary things. One of the ideas is to maybe do there's some ideas, a company called Urban Block, and they do some really creative things with containers. And so we're looking at maybe using a container out there, mostly for seating areas for kids maybe, and for adults, some raised different areas. Not looking at it as a commercial use. We have the potential for that at some point, but that will take some discussions with council and with the city, because I know there's a lot of issues with doing that right now. And also we don't want to block the users behind it. So there's also some discussion of some other temporary uses. If there's something going on, they might be able to bring something into the street to be able to feed some uses into this space. In general, really, the key is for the project to continue to evolve. We're really trying to get this art use in there. And, this idea came from several different ideas that were put together, and we're still working on it. But the key really is to get a flexibility of the uses, some, potential in the future to have some music out there, games, art. And we really, in the future, hope to do more of these. That's one of the reasons for really making sure that we're cost conscious. So you can see in the drawings, there's some turf areas for the kids. There's some rubberized kind of climbing structures that aren't really climbing structures but can be playful. Wooden bench areas where people can talk to each other and have lunch and communicate and again, trying to work within all the existing utilities on the site. And just do some simple ideas in paving and in concrete to identify the space but not making it horrendously expensive to build. And, we're really here to answer questions and just kind of give you an update as to where we are.
Well, thank you, Kathy and Joseph. It is unusual to see you on that end of the podium, but do we have any questions? Cindy looks like she's got a
Or
question.
comments.
Thank you very much. So give me an estimate of time frame now.
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I know that, I think spring, they're looking, that's right, they're looking at it's in here actually in the drawings. If you want to continue in the drawings, you can see some of the other pieces. I believe they're looking at starting in spring of
I
2018.
think you get to move the drawings.
Oh, that's right. I have to. Can I just tell somebody else to do this? Here we go. Okay, let's see. Spring 2018. So as you can see here, we're doing design concept now. We're going to talk to the neighboring businesses and property owners, a little bit of community outreach in the neighborhood over there. Construction beginning after the holidays.
And can you go back to those other drawings?
Mm-hmm.
Please.
These are some, drawings that are just images that Andreas put together based on other things that they've done and other people have done.
So this preserves 3 of the parking spaces when the temporary piece is in. Otherwise, it could conceivably preserve all of the parking
Yes.
spaces.
Yes, and we looked at parklet ideas and different things, but because of the drainage issues, we didn't have water sitting underneath them all the time, so it didn't seem to be the best solution. And whether we use 2 or 3 or 1 or split them, it's something we're still exploring.
Any other questions? Again, thank you very much. I think it's an exciting idea, exciting approach. I'm curious to see how the container would actually fit in. And I love the yarn art and those types of things that are on the trees. Again,
Great.
thank you very much, Joseph and Kathy. Appreciate your presentation.
Great, thanks for taking the time.
Okay, now I'm going to take something that's not necessarily on the agenda, but as you look around our police officers, you're going to notice a patch that looks like this. And it's a Walnut Creek police patch with some additional additions. And I'm going to ask Lieutenant Jay Hill to come up to the podium and explain what this program is, because it's a very important program for every member of the Walnut Creek to know about. It's Captain Hill. Did I say Captain?
You said Lieutenant, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
quite
not
all
up
right.
to date. Captain
Quite
Jay
all right.
Hill.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for giving me the opportunity to discuss this real briefly. I want to give credit where credit is due for this idea, and the person responsible standing in the back of the room, it's Officer Joe Giroge back there. And I didn't know he was going to be in here tonight, but when I saw him, I ordered him not to leave until I was able to properly recognize him for this effort. So this is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And Officer Giroge brought this idea forward to the chief and asked for permission to wear these special patches for the month of October. The chief quickly agreed to this, thought it was a great idea. So we have sold patches to all of our members of the police department, anybody who wanted to buy them. They were made available as well as other employees of the city. And I see you've got one yourself. And these were, in addition to being very nice looking patches, as you can see by our models here that are wearing them today. The idea is that we raise money toward breast cancer awareness, and Joe tells me that we've raised about $2,500. Is that correct? As a result of the sale of these patches. So we're very proud to be able to wear them. We've also had some members from our volunteers group, the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And they came in and volunteered their time, brought in their sewing machines and set up in our police department and took the patches off of the officers' uniforms and sewed these on, and then are going to take them back off in October. So that was saved everybody great expense, and they did this very expeditiously. We appreciate them greatly for that, and we're proud to support this, this great cause.
Well, thank you very much. It is a great cause, and we applaud the police department for doing it. Okay, now we're going to move to the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment with respect to any item on the consent calendar? Not seeing any public comment as to the consent calendar. Do we have any a motion or any questions, or anybody want to pull anything from the consent?
I move that we accept the consent calendar items A through D.
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Haskew.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell. And Mayor Carlston.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're now on item number 3, public communication. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. If you could identify your name, and you'll need to fill out a little speaker's card and get it to Susie.
Ralph Hoffman, and I'm speaking as a senior advocate with the Senior Mobility Action Council. Senior citizens who have weak legs or are in wheelchairs, of course, don't have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem at sports games, or for that matter, in churches where they may stand, sit, or kneel if they're able. And yet somehow we're having a little controversy about athletes kneeling, which is even harder to do than standing for me at sporting events. And I certainly don't see why. I myself certainly wouldn't be arrested or fired if I had a job and I did not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem. And the other thing I want to mention, by the way, today, and maybe you're planning to say something about this, but the flags outside are at half-staff today, and I certainly would like if someone would announce why they're at half-staff. I believe I know, but I think the public should know, because many private flags, they haven't heard yet why they're at half-staff. Thank you.
Well, Ralph, let me answer that question right now. It's in respect for the people who suffered the tragedy in Las Vegas recently.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Here's my speaker card. So you all know my name. It's Pete Bennett. I'm going to read something that is a federal court order, and this is something that's kind of important to me because there's a lot of people here that know about the PG&E explosion, which is a part of my story. It says PG&E, under Department of Justice, PG&E ordered to develop compliance and ethics program as part of its sentence for engaging criminal conduct, 5 years probation. They have a brand new ethics program. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mr. Mattis, but that's your law firm that negotiated the vast majority of that. And on the PUC papers, I found the people that hired me that got fired right after my car got totaled. So I get a feeling that there's a conspiracy. You just read it out. So Mr. Salazar, the head of that, the former Interior Secretary, doesn't feel like he wants to call back. So I use this camera, and I make life difficult because I make no progress in 6 years with the PG&E explosion, and I know I'm a witness. So I have one new site for you called PGEwitness.com, and I'm going to show you what I know and how it affected me. And that's also about the time that they kidnapped my kids. I remember that's kidnapping report, and I want to see something on that. So, and I feel very personal about the Las Vegas thing because I have a friend, his tires were shot up by a sniper. I appeared on Lou Dobbs. I was in Oregon. That was 3 years ago. I appeared on Lou Dobbs. He was shot up by a sniper. And the document stolen off my laptop ended up being a sniper attack in San Jose. That's 3. And I have another one that I'm not going to share. So I stand up here year after year, and I tick down the 3 minutes, 60 seconds at a time. Mr. Buckshire, I looked up the family down in Danville. I know them. They're around the corner from us. And you know why I don't have any suits, Mr. Buckshire? This is what bothers me about the suicide in San Luis Obispo. I lost all my suits when I left the area for about a month and a half. When I lived in Danville, I came back. I had found out my dry cleaner committed suicide. That's a coincidence, right? And my family committed suicide, and my girlfriend and daughter committed suicide, and my roommate and my attorney's son. I spoke at the Lafayette Council meeting a week ago. They weren't real happy with me because part of one of my accidents that just seems to be not an important thing, where somebody I'm positive tried to kill me. I walked out of it after all that was over, and I walked out and I was going to walk from the library across the street. And as I turned the corner, there was a woman that had been just run over in the same intersection I would have entered about a minute earlier. I think my life's in danger. And then the only person to pay me in 10 years, somebody tried to kill his daughter on the freeway. How about Pete? Anything for Pete? I got some bologna tonight, or some sausage, whatever it was. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pete. Next, please.
All right. Good evening, mayors, city council members, and community. My name is Charisse Cound, and these are my daughters, Iris and Robin. And I'm here tonight to say thank you. To say thank you for being a city that is responsive to city needs, a city that works with residents to improve our community for everyone. 2 years ago, my daughter Iris and I attended a pedestrian master planning meeting here at City Hall. There we wrote our suggestions on lists and maps about how to make it safer to walk and bike to school in our neighborhood, to Walnut Acres and to Foothill Middle School. Rafat Ray from the Transportation Department ended up working with a whole coalition from our neighborhood that included principals from both schools, parent leaders, and neighbors. And at first, we didn't know where the money would come from or how this would get done. But we spent 2 years meeting together in the little bagel shop cafe, planning and negotiating and coming to agreements and finding pockets of money that we could cobble together to get things done. And now the city has completed the construction on 2 flashing pedestrian beacons, 3 new crosswalks, a new bike lane outside the middle school, digital speed signs, and sidewalk bulb outs to slow down cars. So tomorrow, I look forward to celebrating with all of you, and the entire community is invited. It will be National Walk to School Day, and we're partnering with Street Smarts Diablo to give out prizes to everyone who walks and bikes, so remind your kids. At Walnut Acres, Foothill, and even Valley Verde. For those who walk to or walk past Foothill Middle School, they can look for what's called a bike blender. Has anyone heard of a bike blender? So the bike, you pedal the bike, and it spins the blender. All right, and the blender is going to have these like lemonade smoothie things that they will be pouring and serving to every student who's walking by that day. They're walking up to school. So it's going to be really fun. And then after the students are all in class at 8:20, we will gather for a short ceremony, and everyone is welcome to join us. So thank you for taking care of our kids and our families and for ensuring safe routes to walk and bike to school. I have a few pictures to share with you that you can share, and Iris has something to say as well.
Hello, I'm Iris Cound, and I would like to say thank you for creating the crosswalk and bike lane near Foothill and Walnut Acres. It's nice to know that when we need to solve a problem, we can have support and the problem will be solved. Now it's much safer there, and more people can walk or bike to school, which also helps the planet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reese and Iris. And we appreciate you highlighting Rafat because we're very proud of the work that he does, but we're also very proud of the other employees who did significant contributions to that project. And we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Any other public comment?
My name is Mark Brown. I'm from the Walnut Creek Historical Society, and I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for all the city has done for the society over the years, particularly with the help in the Centennial, and then also with just the general maintenance of the Shadelands Museum. If you haven't all been there, It's a beautiful home, and the grounds are very well kept by the city. We're very grateful for that. There's been some exterior work, done recently, which exceeded our expectations, and we're also very grateful for that. This helps keeping the grounds in order and keeping the house up to in modern condition, helps us with our fundraising. We currently, through the work of our executive director, Jackie Bird, have weddings booked almost throughout all of next year. And this, coupled with our Christmas tea, allows us to be, in my opinion, a rare commodity, a very profitable nonprofit. And we're very busy using that money to good use. Our Living History program is in full swing with 12 third grade classes scheduled to visit the museum in this fall. Many more will be joining us in the spring. We are hosting a library story time on October 29th at 11 o'clock with a special interactive tour afterwards. More significantly, we're co-hosting with Cowcraft Brewery and the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce an event on Thursday, October 26th. This will be an Oktoberfest theme, and we hope all of you can come to that. Should be a lot of fun. The house will be closed for tours on October 29th and reopen on February 2nd. We do this, of course, to transform our house into a magical, this is Karen Major's word, she's so good, into a magical holiday fair and serve 30-plus delicious Christmas teas at a time. We're currently taking reservations, and we will sell out, as we do every year, by early November. We raise approximately $40,000 a year just from the Christmas teas alone. I think we should raise the price, but anyway. Don't miss this great holiday tradition from Saturday, November 25th to Sunday, December 10th. And we also want to welcome our new city manager, who we understand, Mr. Bucksheath. You may be interested in visiting the museum with your family. We hope you can do that at some point. We will definitely schedule a special tour for you. Just call the museum. And finally, we're having our annual dinner on January 22nd at Scott's Restaurant. We do this every year. And we're very proud to have as our guest speaker Meg Honey, who is the Contra Costa Teacher of the Year and a renowned teacher educator in the history department at Northgate High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and we're very pleased with the Historical Society, and it's our pleasure and privilege to have you located here in Walnut Creek. Okay, we'll now move to item number 4, council members' staff announcements, reports on activities and requests.
Mr. Mayor, there were no closed session announcements for this evening.
City manager?
Yes, 2 brief announcements. During the last city council meeting, I did report that the state legislature had taken action on a housing package consisting of 5 different bills related to raising funding to support affordable housing, as well as what could be coined a streamlining process to help facilitate the building of more affordable housing. As many are likely aware, the governor did sign that housing package recently, so that will take effect. We will have, I'm quite certain, several updates to your council and to the public about what that means for Walnut Creek and what we can expect. And then the other item I just wanted to, for the benefit of the public, the city council during the last council meeting did adopt changes to the upcoming meeting schedule. The October 24th retreat has been rescheduled to November 14th. So on November 14th, we'll have a retreat from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. and then a regular meeting starting at 6 that evening. And then also the November 21st meeting, which is the week of Thanksgiving, has been canceled. And that concludes my report.
Okay, council member reports, and Kevin, this is my practice. I always start with you.
Because we've created a tradition here. The Mayor Pro Tem and I attended our Public Safety Committee meeting this afternoon with the Chief of Police and our captains. A couple of things we discussed. Body-worn cameras are being rolled out. We're expanding of our license plate readers within our police cars. We've requested a review of red light cameras for further discussion. And we will be rolling out notice of our secure exchange zone, which will be coming out in the Nutshell and Next Door as well, talking about how the City Hall can be used for an exchange of personal items. With County Connection, just a quick reminder now that school's in session. There are several requests that are coming through for new school routes, not just in Walnut Creek, but throughout the entire area. And it's just a reminder that for any new requested routes, operations and planning committees need at least 3 months to implement through the entire process. So this has come up, and unfortunately, while things can't be turned on a dime, at least we can look at this for the spring semester if there's any requests for that. I will be in Atlanta next week for the Public Transportation Conference, reviewing the new transportation ideas and vehicles for the County Connection. And finally, I attended the MC board meeting on behalf of Walnut Creek, and one area of interest discussed was our deep green outreach. MCE will work with our city staff to help with some of the Walnut Creek outreach for opting up to deep green for both residences and businesses. It would also help to have our municipal properties opting up to deep green, just like the Lafayette Library has. So there's opportunities here for potential fits.
Thank you, Kevin. Cindy?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I attended the annual awards of Sustainable Contra Costa a couple of weeks ago. It was an excellent evening and really highlighted and showcased the work of different organizations, both public and private across the county, that are working on sustainability activities. The mayor and I are representatives from Walnut Creek on the board of the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority, which is affectionately known as Recycle Smart. And last week at our monthly board meeting, we discussed rates for the upcoming rate year, which will start in in March. And we will be looking at those over the next couple of months. We also discussed the challenges and issues of what they call hard to serve areas, which are areas that are steep, narrow, lots of tree cover, winding, and very difficult to serve with one of those large garbage trucks that we typically see on our streets. Most of those street areas, in fact, are in Orinda and not in Walnut Creek. But we did discuss the challenges of those. And I also want to let everyone know that if you haven't already seen it in your mail, the quarterly newsletter from Recycle Smart is in the mail. It's a great publication, and as my walking partner said to me, it's on her calendar because she really wanted to know what you can recycle from the bathroom. So, and take the quiz on the inside. I actually could ask council and take the quiz here. Last week I attended the Golden Rain Foundation board meeting for Rossmore, as my duty as the liaison from the council to Rossmore, and also Dan, the city manager, came with me, and we had an interesting hour-long listening session, and they were working on their annual budget. They are on a calendar year budget. They did some things related to recycling. They did some things related to road and transportation work, but they also talked about some projects they're currently working on, and they are very pleased that they're coming near the end of the Del Valle Fitness Center and Pool project. It's turned out to be a larger project than they had anticipated or originally planned, so it took much longer to get done, but they're almost done. The Bedford Gallery opened its new exhibition about 10 days ago. It's women painters in the abstract, and it's fascinating. So do stop by the Bedford Gallery to see it. I will remind everyone it's just 10 days to Community Service Day, Saturday, October 14th. There are 53 projects all over the community. A number of them are full, but a number of them still have spaces and are looking for volunteers. And go to the city's service page, which is www.walnut-creek.org/service, to check out projects. And lastly, I will mention that tomorrow night is the first Wednesday of the year. So First Wednesday occurs on the first Wednesday of every month in the spring, summer, and fall. And it is at Cypress and Main Street from 5 to 8 p.m. It's food trucks and music and exhibitor booths. And come on down and meet your neighbors and friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Luella?
So I had a kind of quiet time. I went to CCTA, and we essentially affirmed what the Planning Commission that I told you about from the last meeting did, so there is nothing new to report there. I also attended the welcoming to the new Contra Costa leadership class, and it looks like some pretty fascinating people are in for some really good days coming in the year to come. I graduated from my experience with Contra Costa leadership with former Mayor Kathy Hicks. That's how long ago I went there. So I'm warning all those who are going to leadership that don't think they're not going to get you even 20 years later. So, and then finally, I think it's probably a good idea to remind everybody that flu season is on its way as my nose is running, and that they should consider getting the flu shots to take care of not only themselves, but to prevent them from making other people sick because they caught the flu.
I have two quick announcements, assuming it's my turn.
It definitely is.
The first is, if you've ever wondered what to do like I do with your batteries or other hazardous materials at your house, the answer is easy. Starting October 16th through the 21st, you will be able to deliver on the 20th anniversary collection drive with Central Sand. You'll be able to drop off those materials. There'll be prizes, raffles, lots of great giveaways, and of course, great information. And of course, you will also be helping out the environment by not doing what my kids try to do, which is throw them in the garbage. Additionally, as I'm sure most of us up on this dais know, this weekend is the DRAA Gala. So while there are no tickets, it's been sold out for quite a while, there will be closures downtown, so please be aware as you make your trips.
Okay, it's my turn. I attended our Development Services Forum, which is an excellent forum for developers or any member of the public, on the 20th of September, and enjoyed listening to some of the items that were there. Dan and I had the privilege of meeting Deborah Allen, a BART director that represents this area, and exploring with her some of the issues with respect to BART that I believe have been in the paper and have been on a lot of people's minds. Dan had an experience with his own experience with BART last week. This last week, Dan and I had the opportunity of attending the first meeting of our youth commission and being able to say a few words to them. And we have 15 young men and women who look like they're going to be outstanding, and we're looking forward to having the staff work with them, and then eventually having, I think all the city council members will be addressing them, but then eventually having them look at one of the issues that involves Walnut Creek, study it, and make a presentation to the city council with respect to their solution to that particular issue. Ralph didn't mention it, but this last couple of days there was a program put on by John Muir with respect to senior transportation. Adrian from our staff attended it, and while there are always a lot of opportunities, it seems to me that Adrian and our staff is perhaps one step ahead of the information that is being put out publicly with respect to the difficulty of seniors in getting transportation as they age. I had the privilege of attending a number of events, city events. I'm just simply going to highlight the staff art show reception and how nice it was, and the employee family picnic that was last weekend. And it was just delightful to see our city manager in one of those exercise events. He did it much better than I did. On a more serious note, a couple of meetings ago, I talked about the West Nile virus. They now have identified a dead bird in Walnut Creek. Again, it's something that's a disease that probably won't affect most people, but I'm going to go through one more time what the mosquito and vector control suggests to try to minimize everybody's risk for it. Dump or drain all standing water that you have in your backyard. Defend yourself, use repellents. DEET tends to be the one that people like to use, or oil of lemon eucalyptus also works well. Avoid outdoors when mosquitoes are present, typically dawn and dusk. Maintain neglected swimming pools. Report dead birds to the state hotline by visiting California Department of Public Health, their website. So we're going to move on to the next item, which as soon as I find my agenda. Is item number 5, public hearings, and we have a presentation on pre-zoning for 151 Circle Drive.
Good evening, Mayor Carlston and members of the council. My name is Janine Cavalli. I'm a senior planner with the City of Walnut Creek, and tonight I'll be leading you through a brief presentation on a pre-zoning application for 151 Circle Drive. I have with me this evening the applicant, Mr. Greg DiLoretto, and after my presentation, we will both be available to answer any of your questions. There we go. So the pre-zoning application is for a vacant triangular-shaped property at 151 Circle Drive. It is located within unincorporated Contra Costa County and also within the city's sphere of influence, indicating that the city has previously contemplated inclusion of this property within its limits. It is a constrained remnant lot created by the widening of Interstate 680 in the 90s. And given the unusual triangular shape of the property currently does not have access to or from the adjacent roadway at Circle Drive. The applicant for the property at 151 Circle Drive submitted an application to this local agency formation commission, also known as LAFCO, in March to annex the property into the city of Walnut Creek. As stipulated by LAFCO, the land must be pre-zoned prior to annexation so that when the land is annexed, the zoning has already been determined. The applicant then submitted an application to the city in June to pre-zone the property to single-family residential R10 zoning district. So just to give you a quick overview of the annexation process, pre-zoning is just one of a series of steps in the annexation process, which also includes confirmation to LAFCO that the master property tax exchange agreement with the county applies in this instance, and provision to LAFCO of a will serve letter that the city will provide services upon annexation. Both of those two actions have already occurred, so pre-zoning is the final action, which is before you tonight. Should City Council approve the pre-zoning, then LAFCO will make their decision whether or not to approve or deny the annexation. Staff conducted a findings or a consistency analysis and finds that the proposed pre-zoning is consistent with the regulatory and surrounding physical context. The project site is located within the sphere of influence, as I mentioned, and has a general plan land use designation of single-family medium residential. So that is consistent with the proposed zoning. The proposed zoning is also consistent with the current zoning on the site under the county, which is also R10. And it's also consistent with all of the adjacent properties, again, which are R10, single family residential. So we took this to the Planning Commission on August 24th. They provided a positive recommendation to City Council to pre-zone the property to R10. There were a few points of clarification during that meeting, and through the discussion, it was confirmed that the utilities would continue to provide service upon annexation, that access to the site could be provided from the lot to the south, which is also owned by the same property owner, and that the lot would meet city standards with a lot line adjustment. So staff recommends that the City Council introduce and waive further reading of the ordinance as shown in attachment 1 to pre-zone the subject parcel to the single-family residential R10 zoning district. Such zoning will become effective upon annexation of the parcel into the city of Walnut Creek. This concludes my presentation, and we are now available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question. Is there a downside? Is there a downside to us not annexing?
That is a good question. I would say the downside to not annexing is that the property will likely continue to remain vacant with a deteriorated garage on the site. So the downside is really not
Blight.
annexing. Right.
Okay. Thanks. That's it.
Cindy?
Can you clarify the amount of the size of each of the two parcels, both the one on Lilac and the one on Circle?
The one on Circle Drive is just under 8,000 square foot, and the one on at 1660 Lilac Drive is almost triple that. I think it's about 22. Okay, so the subject parcel is 7,843 square feet. The 1660 Lilac Drive is 21,298 square feet.
So about 29,150 square feet. So just short of 30,000 square feet. Now this would make it's proposed then it would eventually become two lots at the R10, which is basically our 10,000 square feet residential.
Correct.
So, but the two lots will be larger than that. Is there no way, or why is it not possible to put 3 lots?
So,
on the site?
in order to provide access to the 151 Circle Drive, an easement would be required. And an easement of a minimum of 16 foot wide to accommodate a fire apparatus. That area is then deducted from the lot area when calculating density.
So
Yeah.
the unusual shape and the constraints of the freeway that's getting wider, but not in that spot. What an interesting evening to have this conversation. Thank you. The next question I have is, are we improving with this any entitlements to build?
No. Today we are simply looking at pre-zoning the property. It's then in LAFCO's court whether or not they approve the annexation. Then any future building, the applicant would need to submit an application for what's being actually proposed to be developed on the site.
And since this would be 2 homes, 2 single-family homes, that would basically entail design review and planning for the subdivision, the lot line adjustment?
Do we have design review for single family? Sorry.
There wouldn't be design review required unless it was had a larger FAR. There's a FAR threshold, and then it would go through design review.
So this is all staff managed except for the lot line adjustment decision.
Right.
And I've never had an opportunity in my 11 years on council to be able to ask this question. What is the master tax sharing agreement with the county? We finally haven't. I've always asked it, but we've never had one of these to be able to apply it to. How much are we losing in sharing with the county?
Well, yeah, the master tax agreement was negotiated back in the
post Prop 13.
Yeah. Actually, I was just going to send a copy to Dan because he had asked me about that and I forgot until she mentioned it. But it really, what the master tax agreement allows anything up to $10 million in terms of a property tax exchange. Beyond that, we have to renegotiate. So when you're annexing one lot, that's about the only time you can go under that threshold. So it's a graduated tax sharing. Under that tax sharing agreement, if I remember correctly, it never gets up to 100%. We don't get 100%, but it's a...
So the county will continue to collect property tax on this, and we will be collecting less than our typical 9 3/4 cent share,
yes,
roughly.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Luella, do you have a question?
I have one. So you can say feet all you want. I have no concept of what that means. My question is, so I'll understand the answer, is if this winds up being divided into two reconfigured lots, Are they going to be, the buildings on them, are they going to be appropriate for the neighborhood? Are they going to be comfortable with the overall tone of the neighborhood?
So what would be allowed on those two parcels is a single family home on each, and that is consistent with the development pattern in the surrounding area. They're all single family homes, and they're all under the same zoning, R10.
Okay, so it wouldn't have a significant direct impact to any of the neighbors?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I have none, so thank you very much for your report. Do we have any discussion? Well, that's an important point. Thank you. I haven't forgotten that for a while. Did the applicant want to say anything?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members and officials. I just want to introduce myself. I'm the developer, and the name of my company is Bravo Building Company. I'm the president of the company, and I just appreciate the opportunity and to submit our application for this little project. It's a little project, comes with quite a bit of problems in finessing it just right, but I think it'll be very conducive to the neighborhood once we get it there. I stand before you if you have any questions for me. I really don't know exactly what our intentions are. We're just following the bouncing ball like most developers until we get there. We'll have those answers, but I'm sure you'll be hearing from me in the future on this project as to what our exact intentions are. Right now, we just need to get it annexed so we can move the football a little bit.
Greg, we appreciate your comments. I don't imagine there's any questions. So let's open it up for public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment on this particular item?
Thank you and good evening.
Hi, I'm Pete Johnson. I live on Lilac Drive, we're down the street from this vacant lot, and we were here during the Planning Commission, and I think most of our neighbors will be glad to see the vacant lot be no longer vacant. We wanted to turn it into a park at one point, but that didn't fly. So we're glad we've been in touch with Greg here, and he's going to keep us informed as things go along. So we're hoping this will proceed quickly along so we can get the vacant lot cleared. So thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Now, any discussion? If not, entertain a motion.
So I will be delighted to make the motion, but I first want to say thank you to the neighborhood and to the developer for bringing this forward. I have walked by it for 33 years, as have Pete and his wife and many of the neighbors, and it's always been a question, whatever happened? Wonder what this really ever looked like. Evidently, the rest of the street is under the freeway as it was widened. So thank you very much. It will be a little challenging on Lilac where those utility boxes are, where Lilac and Lancaster meet, and how you're going to run that easement. But I know you'll be working with the neighborhood and with all of us to ensure that it comes out great. So I am happy to move. Sorry. Move to introduce and waive further reading the ordinance pre-zoning the vacant real property at 151 Circle Drive to R10 single-family residential zoning, consistent with the general plan land use designation.
Second.
Is there any other comments? Call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Silva?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk?
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell?
Aye.
And Mayor Carlston?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Pete, we look forward to that lot becoming part of Walnut Creek. The next item is item number 5B, to amend section 1 or 10-2.3.203 of the Walnut Creek zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Andrew Smith, Senior Planner in the Planning Division, and I have a fairly brief presentation for a very straightforward zoning ordinance amendment tonight. In our zoning ordinance, we have, of course, parking regulations related to development, and there are processes that are in the zoning ordinance that allow for reductions to the standard requirement, also for shared parking arrangements, so two uses sharing a single parking facility, for example, as well as off-site parking, which would be basically you have your parking, it's just not on the same property. In order to take advantage of those options, the current zoning ordinance requires a conditional use permit approved by the Planning Commission. The zoning ordinance amendment before you tonight changes that to a minor use permit approved by the zoning administrator. And that's really it, actually. Well, why are we doing this? For one, actually, I do want to mention that the criteria for consideration of these applications remains the same, but the process will be simpler. In particular, zoning administrator meetings, they tend to be shorter, and we don't do PowerPoint presentations as much as I like to do them. And so that takes less time, which then, of course, costs the applicant less money. I will note, though, however, if the project that is involved with the parking arrangement is required to go to the Planning Commission for some other reason, say a use permit, the parking decision will still be bumped up to the Planning Commission, so you won't be required to have two separate hearings. You know, one at the Planning Commission for the use permit, one for the zoning administrator for the parking. That will not be the case. Types of projects, I kind of went over those, but just as some examples, in some cases, lift parking, mechanical parking, if the mechanical lifts don't quite meet the standard dimensional requirements in the ordinance, those are sometimes the type of applications that we would see through this process. Off-site parking, this was some off-site employee parking for Broadway Plaza. This was, of course, before the remodel. Valet parking, this office building here on Ignacio Valley Road at North Broadway. Previously, it's now Scott Valley Bank, but previously the owner was looking to change it into medical offices, which typically requires more parking. There's already a parking structure there, so to accommodate the increased requirement, they applied for successfully a conditional use permit to allow valet or attendant parking to basically stack the cars in the same structure. A greater number of cars. And then there really is actually occasionally, very occasionally, a true parking reduction. This is Muir Orthopedic out in the Shadelands, and in that case, they were able to document through a parking study that their particular use really had a lower patient density in effect, and so that their particular type of medical office generated a lower parking demand than a regular, Kaiser or something like that, and so they received a conditional use permit to provide less parking because, of course, parking is very expensive and it takes a lot of land, and we don't want people to build parking that they don't need, only what they actually do need. So our recommendation tonight, and also the Planning Commission's recommendation when we took this before them, is simply to adopt the proposed zoning ordinance amendment, or more particularly, the action would be, of course, to introduce and waive further reading of the zoning ordinance amendment. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have questions? Cindy.
Thank you very much. So a minor use permit is similar to a conditional use permit in that it will run with the land and not with the ownership of the property?
Yes, that's correct.
So no difference there.
Correct.
And as I recall in reading the way this is written, this would not be the situation if other aspects, other development questions were coming forward. So a new building that might be seeking a parking reduction or the use of mechanical lifts, that would then go to the Planning Commission as part of the normal process.
For the parking reduction, it would only need to go to the Planning Commission if the use itself needed to go to the Planning Commission, say for a conditional use permit, for a conditionally permitted use rather than a...
Or for a new building.
New building, possibly, yes. If a new building only requires design review, however, the Design Review Commission would not have the authority to make the decision. That would still
So
go
then
to
the
zoning
administrator would do it.
Correct.
So the appeal process, if someone from the community wanted to appeal the decision of the zoning administrator, or even the applicant wanted to appeal, does it go to the Planning Commission?
Yes.
And you mentioned this tonight, you used the word valet parking, but then you also said attendant parking. Do you mean attendant assisted parking?
Yes.
Such as like what they're doing at the BART station?
Yes.
During the temporary construction. So the ordinance itself currently, and I'll refer now to the city attorney because I did talk to him about this. The ordinance actually, part 4, the resolution, refers only to item 4. Says we may permit valet parking provided that the location for valet parking services do not severely impede on or off-site traffic or pedestrian circulation. It would be appropriate to put the phrase or attendant assistant parking in here.
Right, and if Andy and I spoke earlier today about this as well too. If the council wanted to include, to have it read, permit valet or attendant assisted parking in that section 4, then you would be covering both of the opportunities. Andy, I think, can speak to this, but staff has looked at valet and attendant assisting similarly in the past, so that's not a change from what your practice has been. If the council's interested in introducing this ordinance with that change in the language, then I have a draft of an ordinance that you could look at tonight with just the change to it. So I'll pass that out through Dan.
Thank you.
It's on the change is on the second page in sub 4, and it's shown in red line and strikeout, recognizing that the ordinance is already in red line format.
So in your presentation to my last question, in your presentation to the Planning Commission in August, you mentioned this is part of other streamlining efforts from the Blueprint for Success, and I appreciate that. I think the Planning Commission may have mentioned a couple of other possibilities, such as the approval of ATM locations in an existing building and monopoles. Are we looking at those alternatives? That's a nod in the affirmative, just so the record shows that. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question. Steve, this goes to you because by making this ordinance specific with the additional language, which I have no problem with, does it impact any of the other ordinances that may not use both terms?
We don't believe it will. We did look through the ordinance, and the director also looked through the ordinances as well too, to confirm that we were not creating any inconsistency. So we've not found any inconsistency. We believe this would cover it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, now it's time for public comment. Does anybody, member of the public, wish to comment upon this particular proposal? Not seen any public comment coming forward. It's time for discussion. Any discussion among council as to this? If no discussion, then perhaps a motion.
I'm happy to make the motion. I would like to make the motion for the amended language of the ordinance. So I move that we, sorry, need to get the correct language. To introduce and waive further reading the ordinance amending Title 10 Planning and Zoning to the Municipal Code to change the reviewing body for parking reduction, shared parking, and off-site parking considerations from the Planning Commission to the Zoning Administrator as amended with the additional clarifying phrase attended assisted parking in Part 4.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I actually, after we vote, I had one other item I just wanted to mention.
Let's call for roll call, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell.
Aye.
And Mayor Carlston.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Cindy, you had one other issue that you and I talked about earlier.
Well, I just wanted to mention, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to staff for bringing these forward, but I'm also very interested in us really starting to have a substantive conversation here at the council level on capacity and of parking and the strategies that we can use related to capacity that are not necessarily brick and mortar.
Does anybody have, obviously that's not on the agenda tonight, but does anybody have an objection to staff studying that and bringing it back to the City Council? Not seeing any objection. We'll provide that direction to staff. Okay, we're now moving on to item number 6A, roadway maintenance update.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Scott Wickstrom. I'm a senior engineer here with the city. And tonight I'll be presenting the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, more commonly known as SB 1 or Senate Bill 1. We'll talk a little bit about some of our recent road maintenance efforts. I'll give a little bit of a history and some background about what our road maintenance funding is, and then we'll kind of dive into SB 1. And ultimately, the recommended action tonight is that we amend the 2016-2018 capital budget to incorporate a project list of RMRA eligible projects for this funding. So we'll talk about that in a second. So recent efforts. This year we were very active with paving. Couple pictures up here. We did a rubber cape seal on Rossmore Parkway at the request of the Golden Rain Foundation on a last minute change to our paving program. We also did a rubber cape seal to Walnut Avenue, which introduced buffered bike lanes, or for some of the first buffered bike lanes in Walnut Creek, and still leaving plenty of room for the cars to drive down there. North Main Street, this was some paving work that we did last year. North Main has been repaved from San Luis all the way up to the Pleasant Hill border. Marchbanks is another one where we had the opportunity, because of the wide paving width, to, as part of our slurry project, add some bike lanes in there to kind of also serve as a traffic calming measure as much as anything else in that otherwise wide and sometimes fast road. But I think the big effort that we did this year was really taking the first bite at Ignatia Valley Road, which was last paved in 1989. This year we paved the first segment from California Boulevard to Civic Drive, and those people who drive it, 72,000 people per day, surely notice the nice smooth roadway there. So I do want to talk a little bit about our pavement evaluation. So the MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, requires that we survey our streets on an annual basis. And they basically break the cities into 3 sections, and we survey different parts every year. Our most recent evaluation was completed in May of this year, and one of the notes was that our pavement condition index, our PCI, has increased from 72 to 75. It's a bit of good news. It's a glimpse to say that our efforts are being seen throughout the city. Another part of that study is it basically serves as a mechanism for us to kind of evaluate what our budget needs are for our pavement. And as part of that study, it was determined that we need an annual expenditure of $3.4 million to maintain our roads in their existing condition, if you will, to maintain that pavement condition index at 75. I will note that this is down from our previous reports that we had of $4.5 million a year. So this is, again, a good news and a reflection of some of the work that both engineering and our street maintenance department has done. We're not out of the woods. We still do have a significant amount of deferred maintenance. And instead of showing pictures of potholes and cracked roads, I decided to show 213 centerline miles within the city of Walnut Creek, color-coded by how old the pavement is. And most notably, to reflect some of this deferred maintenance, those roads that are colored red reflect pavements that were constructed over 20 years ago. I'll call your attention to a couple things on here. I got my little pointer. This little stretch here of Ignatia Valley Road from Civic to California is new. It's the work that we paved this year. That cost $1.5 million to construct. You can look at the length of Ignatia Valley Road and kind of just do a little projection of how much the entire roadway network to do to repave Ignatia. Also point out that when a speaker came up earlier and talked about Cedro Avenue, Foothill Elementary, we did slurry seal the whole neighborhood here between Walnut Avenue, Dover, Cedro, Blackstone. That also was a $1.5 million slurry project that we accomplished to preserve those roadways. So we still do have a lot of work to do. I see Cindy looking at it closely. We can talk more about these. I could talk all day about this stuff. You're down in the bottom corner. Zooming in a little bit to talk a little bit about what we have upcoming. The first one down here in the lower right, it's a segment idea. Each one of our streets broken up intersection to intersection is logged in a database. We have all the information. So in the lower right corner, it's segment ID 14950. That's Oak Grove Road. Last activity, 1982. We did a 1.5 inch or 1.25 inch overlay on that. So we're going on 35 years since the last time we did work on that. It's been a little while. As I talk about projects and project list, we actually have that scheduled for work next year. I also want to call out what's the Woodlands neighborhood up in the upper right corner over there. I just pulled one of the streets in that neighborhood. That street, if you've been in that neighborhood, you drive those roads and they actually look like they're in pretty good condition. However, they were paved 16 years ago. It's a long time to be sitting out in the sun, to be exposed to the weather. They are beginning to start to crack and showing the first bits of weathering. So to be proactive in our maintenance, we have scheduled to do a slurry seal in that neighborhood in 2019, where we basically seal the cracks and then provide or put a protective slurry coat over the roads, and it really extends the life of the road by forestalling some of the UV degradation that we see. Last one I have up here is an arrow pointing to Shadelands, a portion of Shadelands over here at segment ID 19,000. Initial paving 1979, and you see no further action on that. That's not even on our list to pave. I will say that we do work in close partnership with our street maintenance department, and they were out on Shadelands doing patch repairs in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So we are doing what we can with our limited funds to kind of stretch our dollars as much as we possibly can. Okay. So roadway maintenance funding. Our existing gas tax is approximately 1.5 million. It's important to note that about 600,000 of that comes off the top per year and goes to our street maintenance division that we work in partnership with. So the capital portion of it's about 900,000. Measure J, return to streets, their local streets and roads component, provides about another $850,000 a year. General fund, depending on year, depending on other needs, is running between 0 to 400,000. This last 2-year cycle, we did put $400,000 per year towards roadway maintenance. And grant funding. Grant funding is out there, but it's intermittent and it's variable, and it's not something that we can necessarily count on in terms of getting our work done. We're talking about gas tax, so I'll pull up this nice little chart here. The key takeaway in this here is it's very complicated. If you wanted to learn more, there's an excellent resource. It's highlighted up there, californiacityfinance.com. They do a lot of forecasting that our cities use. They do the best that you could possibly do to put this in plain language. But it's complicated. It's also very volatile. In 2010, they did a what's known as the excise sales tax swap to get around some constitutional issues with bond repayments, and it's led to a significant amount of volatility in the revenues that we see on the city and county end of things. I'll also note that the gas tax has not increased since 1994. And so I pulled this little chart off of a little information flyer showing in blue the vehicle miles traveled and in orange the gas consumption. And you can see they ran in tandem for quite some time. We had the Great Recessions and vehicle miles traveled kind of flattened out a little bit. They're beginning to pick back up, but consumption has decreased. And I hope Justin doesn't take too much offense, but there it says little Chevy Volt coming over here. It's good on the pocketbook. It's good for the environment. It's not helping out the roads very much at all. So if you include the decreased consumption, if you will, the decreased tax receipts, along with the fact that paving has gotten more expensive, cost of construction, inflation, if you will, what we could have paved 1 mile's worth of road in 1994, we're paving less than half a mile now in today's dollars. So it's less than half the value that we had in 1994. So SB1 really is something that was recognized by our state legislature that this issue was occurring, and it's really meant to plug that gap. So slightly less confusing than the regular gas tax. And I will sometimes refer to RMRA to differentiate the fund account from the existing gas tax, which is HUDA. Again, California City Finance, should you want more reading about this. SB1 revenues, it does a few things. It increases gas and diesel taxes. These are excise taxes, not sales tax, a subtle difference. It also begins to impose a vehicle license fee, particularly on zero emissions vehicles. And somewhat importantly, but subtly, resets the HUDA, the existing gas tax, excise tax rates to decrease that volatility. So it stabilizes the revenue source, revenue coming from the existing gas tax plus providing a new source coming in. It is apportioned to cities and counties by formula, basically population, and our projected revenues as provided by the city finance or California City Finance .com website. So they're looking at about $400,000 in fiscal year 18 and $1.2 million in fiscal year 19, which would be, if you will, the first full year of tax receipts. So that's kind of what we're projecting going forward. Okay. SB 1 does have some requirements. It is the Road Repair and Accountability Act, so the accountability portion. First component is a maintenance of effort. They are introducing a new source of revenue. They do not want to supplant any existing discretionary money that's spent on roadway. It's important to realize that includes both capital expenditures that we look at through the capital budget, plus also operational expenditures such as our street maintenance division. They also want a project list, if you will, a plan of how we intend to spend that money in an adopted budget as required by the statute, and we are required to submit those to the state by October 16th. So in basically about a week and a half, we have to get that turned in, hence why I'm in front of you tonight. And then lastly, first we're going to tell them what we're going to do with the project list, and then on an annual basis, we'll report exactly how we spent the money, specifically what projects we spent them on, so that can be then reported going forward. So the capital budget amendment, it appropriates revenues for fiscal year 18-19. You can best think of it as a pre-appropriation of the 18-20 capital budget. We traditionally, when we work with roadway funds, are a year behind the revenues. The revenues are typically done on a fiscal year. It ends in July or June of the year. That's too late for us. We need to go out to bid in March and April, get our contracts going. So really a fiscal year 18 funds that we receive will be spent in 19. Fiscal year 19 funds will be spent in the year 2020. And we've always kind of held back a year just because of that delay and the offset in the timing of the funding. So this can really be thought of as a pre-appropriation of the funds that we're looking at for next year. It does add project list detail to the worksheet as required by the state law. And I will say that in kind of response to some questions that Cindy Silva had, there are some revisions on the dais to remove the project estimates. We are very careful to budget our projects to make sure we can afford all we have planned to do, but I can understand how it's a little bit confusing with some of the appropriations and other funds. So we've removed all those project estimates from the project description worksheets, from the resolution, and also the information that will be included in the SB1 project list. And lastly, there are a couple minor changes in the text of the resolution, more some naming to be clear that the intention and the focus of this is really to adopt a project list sufficient to meet the requirements of SB1. So the project list, 4 projects over the next 3 years. The first one is Oak Grove Road. It's no coincidence why I pulled that one out, that it's done 35 years ago. We intend to get to a good portion of that in 2018. And then we'll follow up in 2019 with another portion as well as Ignatia Valley Road. They were done somewhat separately. This is a federally funded grant that we'll be using for portions of this work, and so there's some reasons for us to split it up in this particular fashion. It certainly facilitates our work. 2019, we're also proposing and planning to repave North Main Street. This would be south of the freeway to where the California Boulevard splits. If you've driven that section, it's about half crack seal, half asphalt at this stage of the game, so it's due. And then we have in here in 2020 to pave Broadway north of Ignacio and the length of Parkside Drive, both of which are also in dire need of paving. So again, purpose tonight is the recommended action is for council to adopt a resolution to amend the 2016-2018 capital budget to incorporate the additional project information as required for SB1. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sure there are a few questions. Anybody have any questions? Luella.
For a change. So I don't think that because I live within 500 yards of one of the sections that are there, I have to recuse myself. It didn't even occur to me to ask before this moment. It's a very small 500.
Got it. I would recommend that you abstain on the vote on that section.
Okay.
And let the council consider that section first, then you can vote on the other
Okay.
3 sections.
Okay. But then I do have a question for you, Carlton, and that is, at what point does paving over work? And I'm thinking of, as I drive down Ignacio, the center, the median strip is like this deep off the road. I mean, at some point, are we going to pave over the median strip? And do you have to ever at some point replace the whole dang thing down to the bed?
Two different points. Ignacio Valley Road is a very unique roadway. It's one of those ones that was designed years ago as a deep lift asphalt section. It has plenty of structural integrity to the roadway. Depending on where we are, we may be in a position where we grind down and then replace the asphalt, or we may be in a position where we do maybe grind down 1 inch and add 2 inches back in. We go through a detailed pavement evaluation study on each one of these beforehand. There are sections, particularly as you go a little further east towards Oak Grove Road, where the center median is about 1.5 inches, that we are contemplating that we'd go so far as to demolish out all that existing curb and gutter and reconstruct the median as well, which would just further to the expense of the project.
Okay, Cindy, did you have a question?
I did, and thank you very much for the detail. So I was really intrigued, 213 centerline miles. How many of those are older than or haven't been repaired in 20 years? Did you ever do a curiosity calculation?
I didn't, but I could.
Oh, that'd be great, because I'm really curious.
Okay.
And so I know there's different levels of road work. So you were kind of describing a slurry seal. So maybe you could describe the different levels and how often we do them.
Mm-hmm.
And what the impact is, because I have a feeling the ones in the red have had some work, but not the significant work. So perhaps you could clarify.
Correct. So we do have many tools in our toolbox, if you will, to maintain the roads, and we use all of them, quite honestly. I'll maybe kind of start out cheapest to most expensive. It's a nice way to think about it. The cheapest and best thing we can do for our roads is for us to put crack seal and seal up the cracks to prevent water from infiltrating into the roadway, getting down in the sub base and the subgrade, softening the pavement and leading to failure, premature failure. Our street maintenance division is very proactive in doing that. So it's the little black lines, the little black snakes you see on the road all over the place.
You mean like on South Main Street in the Caltrans presentation?
Exactly, and also on North Main Street in the area that we're going to pave. But yes, you see it all over Ignacio Valley Road. That's the cheapest, most efficient thing we can do to extend our roadway network life. I don't really have a dollar per square foot. It's kind of a difficult kind of concept, but it's very inexpensive. It's a very effective treatment. The second thing as we kind of come down through is to do what we refer to as a slurry seal. A slurry seal is basically an oil emulsion with a little bit of sand on it. And we always crack seal the roads first. So you seal up the cracks and then you put this emulsion on it. And I've kind of described it akin to sunscreen for the roadways. UV degradation is a serious problem over the long haul. Something sits out in the sun for 20 years. The asphalt degrades, it gets stiff, it begins to crack, cracks form, water infiltrates, the road begins to fall apart. By putting a slurry seal on, we can extend the life of the road fairly inexpensively. We typically look at a cost of about 50 cents per square foot for a slurry seal, and obviously we multiply that by the whole area in Walnut Avenue and Dover and all those streets, it gets to be $1 million.
And how often do we do that?
We typically look to do that at about a 9-year cycle. That area over Woodlands, we're up at 16 off a brand new pavement. We're a little bit longer than we would like to go, but we're getting to it. The next kind of step, if you will, is to do, there's some intermediate technologies that come out. One will be a rubber cape seal, where you do a chip seal and then you do a slurry seal on top of that. It's kind of a little more than a slurry, not quite an overlay. It's cost about $1 per square foot. It's another tool in our toolbox. That's what we did on Rossburg Parkway. It's what we did on Walnut Boulevard. It'll extend the life of those more heavily traveled roads a little bit longer, provide a little more protection. We moved to overlays, which is what everyone's common with. That's what we did on Ignacio Valley Road. You grind the road out, you repave it. We typically look about $5 per square foot for that kind of work. So we're suddenly looking at an order of magnitude jump. And then lastly, and we don't do this very often, thankfully, is a full reconstruction of a road. Last one we did was Geary Road. estimates vary, but that's somewhere between $20 to $40 per square foot. So again, you're looking at another order of magnitude. If you let a road get so bad that it's completely failed, you're in for a lot more expensive treatment than if you get it early with a slurry seal or a crack seal.
Thank you. That's the first time that I've heard that explained, and you've explained it very clearly, so thank you very much. So as we move forward on these projects, the 4 that are outlined here, that these funds would help significantly to pay for, are we allowed to integrate bicycle and pedestrian improvements that we've identified for those routes?
Absolutely, and that's something we do as a matter of course every time we repave a road. You can evidence by Walnut Boulevard adding the buffered bike lane, Marchbanks. When we repaved Buena Vista, we added bike lanes. It is also something that's strongly encouraged as part of the SB1 funding, that you basically have a complete streets plan and that you look at complete streets initiatives for all of these streets. If you saw up there the 2020, we're looking at Broadway. We're also looking at Parkside, which I know are part of the North Downtown Specific Plan, and depending on where that falls and what ultimate pavement treatments or striping desires are, pushed through that, we will look to incorporate those to the extent we can.
My one final question is really a funny question. So your little diagram of the vehicle miles traveled and the consumption, just to be clear, we're consuming less gas because our cars are more fuel efficient, even
Correct.
to the point of being all electric.
Correct.
That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council here? I had a question. I wanted to follow up on one of Cindy's. The 213 miles, you'll provide that information, which is very important in my mind. Is there a way, if it's over 20 years, what typically is done and what would the typical cost be? Or which of these levels would you typically do after 20 years?
When we choose our streets and work through our paving plan, we typically look to forecast out 2 to 3 to 4 years in what we're looking to do. We do a combination of street age and its pavement condition index. I didn't actually bring that slide or show that slide on here. The pavement condition index, it's literally someone goes out and counts the number of cracks on the road. There's different types of cracks that indicate different types of distress, but we look at those in conjunction. So, for example, the Woodlands neighborhood, the PCI on that area is actually very high. Those are very nice streets. They were paved 16 years ago. However, we know that to do a little preventative maintenance now, because they haven't been touched in such a long time, is a very efficient use of funds. As we get to older streets and a lot of our arterials, a lot of it comes down to be just purely a funding limitation, right? We don't have enough money to pave all of our arterials like we would like to. So we have to basically look at what is the road condition, how is it failing, work in conjunction with our street maintenance division, how often are they out there doing patch repairs, and kind of use that in conjunction between the two of them. So yeah, it's a combination of both the condition index and the age of the street when we look to select a paving program.
Have you done any modeling as to what funds you need? Because obviously with these funds, we're just going to keep where we are, which is going to mean we're still going to have a lot of these streets that are need serious work, but we don't have funding for. But have you done any modeling to see what that amount would be if we were to bring all of our streets up to the appropriate grade?
Yes. So as part of that MTC required inspection of all of our roadways, they basically require the report. The report has 3 different model, or actually 5 different model scenarios in it. 1 is do nothing. 2 is fund it at its current rate. 3 is maintain your existing PCI, which is typically what we budget for. And then there's 2 different scenarios. One, which is if you had all the money, if you passed a bond measure, if you had all your money up front, how much money would you need up front to catch all your backlog deferred maintenance? And also, if you're able to do that on a distributed over the next 5 years, how much money would that be? We do have those figures. I do not recall exactly what they are. I will be back in 2 weeks for the 10-year CIP, and I could gladly present that information at that time.
That would be appreciated. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any public comment? Not seeing any public comment. I'll close public comment. Any discussion? Now I have a question for Steve. How will we formulate these motions?
Yeah, so the appropriate way for the council to consider the action would be first for the council to consider the inclusion of the project that's identified, Ignacio Valley Road and Oak Grove Road Rehabilitation Project. So entertain a motion to include that in the SB1 list. And then Councilmember Haskew, I think, is that the one that is closest to your home?
No.
Oh, well, try it again.
So,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
exclude the one.
So there is another issue. Councilmember Wilk lives near two of them.
Two of them.
That's okay.
How close are we
It's
talking about?
Within 500 feet.
500 feet?
Within 500 feet.
So, well, no,
You're-
Ignacio,
You're 500 feet from Ignacio and Oak Grove.
but I'm not 500 feet from that intersection.
I know, but the one has, well, you are to the Oak Grove one, and the second one includes Ignacio and Oak Grove, so you're kind of.
I don't mind
I
abstaining.
think we're going to have to
Yeah.
do this in three motions.
I think you'll have to do it in 3 motions.
That's
And
fine.
you should, are there any that the two of you are both abstaining from? Or are they separate ones?
I think he's got the other end, I've got the lower end, and he's got the upper end.
She's the second one, he's the
Third one?
second and third one.
Yeah. Let's just identify them each time, and then we
Right,
can
but
abstain as
We need
needed.
to start.
We
just
need, we
from
need a
pri-
resolution.
Right.
Should we do a resolution and then amend to add?
No, the way, Mayor, the way I'd recommend you do it is you do a motion to add the individual projects for the items on which council members have a potential conflict. And then when you vote on that, if it's within 500 feet of your residence, you abstain. And then once we've gone through each of the conflicted areas, then the council can entertain a motion to approve the entire resolution with the list, and that can be voted on by all the council members.
So
because
I'm going to
Okay.
start with the first motion, which would be the 2019 OBAG 2, because that hits both of them. Then I'll go to the second motion, which is the 2018 Oak Grove, which only Luella has to abstain from. And then the third motion would be the remaining 2, which all of us could vote on.
Correct.
All right.
Now, with respect to that third one, Steve, is it adequate the way that Cindy has identified that? Because you've got really 3 separate resolutions.
Right, but it's actually, think of it a little bit differently. It's 3 separate motions that all get combined into one
Into one
resolution.
resolution.
Once the motions are voted on independently, that's the council's direction, and all we're really doing in the resolution is just memorializing it into one document that we can provide as part of our SB 1 compliance report, so.
And the fact that we have 2 council members who are going to have to abstain for certain parts doesn't mean that they have to abstain for the overall resolution.
That's correct. Once the council is given direction on the individual segments, that's the direction of the council. The resolution at the end is simply memorializing the actions that the council's done before.
Okay, Cindy, you want to make the first motion?
Sure. I move to adopt the resolution amending the list of funding eligible projects for the capital budget of expenditures for the city of Walnut Creek for the period of July 1, 2016 to June 30th, 2018 for the 2019 OBAG 2 Ignacio Valley Road and Oak Grove Road Rehabilitation Project.
I'll second that. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Silva,
Aye.
Mayor Carlston.
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew,
Aye.
Councilmember.
No,
I
you're
also
abstaining.
can't.
You're abstaining.
I'm abstaining. I'm sorry, I thought it was his, not mine. I'm abstaining, sorry.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
No.
No, you abstain.
That's abstain on this one, too. Abstain.
And Mayor Pro Tem Waddell.
Aye.
We're like, where are we?
Motion carries with council members Haskew and Wilk abstaining.
All right. Now I'm ready.
And just for the record, these are motions to approve these individual segments within the
Okay.
SB1 report. You're not actually acting on the resolution yet.
Thank you. All right. Do you want me to amend my motion, or are we just?
I think we have it clear for the record.
All right.
we
So
understand what
move
you're
to
doing.
adopt the list of funding eligible projects for the SB1 report for the period of July 1, 2016 to June 30th, 2018, to include the 2018 Oak Grove Rehabilitation Project.
Second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Silva,
Aye.
Mayor Carlston.
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk,
Abstain.
and Mayor Pro Tem Waddell.
Aye.
Motion carries with Councilmember Wilk abstaining.
Cindy, the third one now.
Move to adopt the list of funding eligible projects for the SB1 report for the period of July 1, 2016 to June 30th, 2018, to encompass the 2019 OBAG North Main Street Rehabilitation Project and the 2020 Roadway Rehabilitation Project.
Second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Silva?
Aye.
Mayor Carlson?
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Now we have the resolution.
So now you would adopt the resolution, and the resolution would incorporate the council's prior direction.
All right, move to adopt the resolution amending the capital budget expenditures for the city of Walnut Creek for the period of July 1, 2016 to June 30th, 2018, reflecting the prior votes on the funding eligible projects.
Second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Silva?
Aye.
Mayor Carlson?
Aye.
Councilmember Haskew?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waddell?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we've finished the entire program, so we're going to join the, adjourn the meeting. What? Oh, excuse me. There are two things we wanted to cover. One was Evelyn Munn. She is a former mayor, I believe twice, for the city of Walnut Creek. She passed away recently in Fountain Hills, Arizona, and we want to recognize her dedication and the service she performed to the city of Walnut Creek and remember her in conjunction with what she did to benefit the city of Walnut Creek. Second, we wanted to express our concern and empathy for the people in Las Vegas who suffered the grievous injuries recently, and as a city recognize them as well, which has been recognized in part by the fact that we have our flags at half-mast. Now, I'll adjourn the meeting.